this can't be happening because it just brought back these horrific memories of, not memories, I mean horrific, of World War II, of Nazi Germany, of exactly where you're boycotting the Jews. It brought back images of people being forced to wear the cross on the Star of David on their shoulders. And so this can't be India.
Mahua Moitra, you went to the Supreme Court along with a couple of other petitioners to fight against Yogi Adityanath's contentious order on the Kanwar Yatra, which asked that nameplates of shop vendors, even pushcart vendors, be displayed. You've had a big win in the Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court has, at least for the moment, halted this order and has observed that it is an infringement, potentially, of India's secular character. Your first thoughts?
No, I'm very happy about this, Barkha, because when I decided to file this on Friday, and this had been building up, as you know, when the first order came out. When I saw it on Twitter, I think it was Mohammed Zubair, who had tweeted it, and I thought it was a joke. And then I saw the video of, I think it was the SP of Muzaffarnagar, saying that, and he was trying to couch it and say that they're trying to do it as though to save people and to make sure that everybody's okay and this is a law and order issue. And I said, this can't be happening because it just brought back these horrific memories of, not memories, I mean horrific, of World War II, of Nazi Germany, of exactly where you're boycotting the Jews. It brought back images of people being forced to wear the cross on the Star of David on their shoulders. And so this can't be India. What is happening? And then you saw the next 2 days that the tempo just kept building, and they extended it to all of the state of UP. You then had Uttarakhand doing it. You had bits of MP doing it. And the funny thing was that, yes, there are people who are vegetarians in this country. There are people who are vegetarian and strict vegetarians where they don't touch certain things for certain months of the year. And that's all part of the secular character of India. And my own grandmother, after my grandfather died, for example, doesn't eat meat or fish. She doesn't even eat dal. And that's part of it. That's okay. When I do puja, I'm not mixing utensils. That's okay. But the issue is that this was that you were asking the eateries, and these are small dhaba owners, little tea shops, to display the name of the owner and the name of the employees. And what really struck me was there was a photograph of a man selling mangoes. It's a fruit, and it says Ari Hal.
I saw that. So two points there. Interestingly, when the police of Muzaffarnagar first announced this, there was an uproar. And then the police said that it was voluntary. But Yogi Adityanath then said, no, it's not voluntary. And it's not just Muzaffarnagar. It will apply across the state. Even so, this analogy that you draw with Germany, with the Nazis, do you think that is a proportionate analogy?
Barkha, what baffles me is that people like you, after going through the last 7 years of this government,
I don't support this policy.
Not at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out that it baffles me that even a question like this can even be framed by any journalist, right? Where we have seen in the past 5 to 7 years, anything that we thought 7 years ago was, oh my God, this couldn't be happening. Not only has it happened, 10 times worse than that has happened. So of course, this is the analogy, and of course, this is what it is. I mean, this is where people on the pretext of just having beef have been lynched to death, where people have been pulled out of trains where they thought they were having, because you had beef in your fridge, you were killed, where young boys who were transporting their own cows have been pulled out and killed. People have lost lives. And this is a situation where we are living in, and this has been not only, it has been applauded for people who have done this kind of work, instead of being looked at as murderers and killers, have been applauded, have been garlanded by BJP MPs all over. There have been crowdfunding to pay for their legal defense, for example. So in that, I think it is very, there is no question of how bad can it get. I think it is already as bad as it is, and we need to stand.
So I'm on record saying that I completely disagree with this policy, and B, I actually find a double speak in those who object to namaz in public. There has been an FIR against those who offer namaz in a Lucknow mall, those who have outrage against halal certification, but actually think that this is a law and order move. But I'll tell you why I asked the question that I did. Not just to be contrarian, which is partly my job, but to say that we have just emerged from a very robust election in which people like yourselves have a much stronger voice than you did earlier, which shows that some things are working. And even today, something has worked. The court has stepped in. The court has said, we're putting a halt to this. That's why I asked that question.
I think it's all the more important that on the back of a robust election, where the electorate has put us all back in parliament and has put more voices like us in parliament, that the electorate wants the Constitution of India to be protected. The electorate is telling us that whenever there have been attempts by a majoritarian government to ride roughshod over the Constitution, that someone needs to take over the reins and someone needs to put a brake on this. And that's our job. And that's why we are here. So I think on the back of this robust election, given the message that voters have given all of us public representatives, this is all the more our job that we, at the very slightest inkling of something like this, that we immediately stand up and say, wait, stop. And we don't wait for it to get to stage 2. And one of the 2 points that was in my petition was that we have centuries of hard work has gone into breaking down caste taboos. This is not just about Muslims. It's about Dalits, about backward caste.
The whole idea of purity and impure.
So we were fighting it on programs. One is Article 15, which is discrimination. One is Article 17, which is untouchability. One is Article 19, which is the freedom to trade. And Article 21, which is, of course, privacy. So these were fought on 4 basic tenets. And then on top of that, there were 2 additional arguments. It has taken us centuries of breaking down caste taboos via intercaste dining. Having a meal together at the same table has always been the ultimate test of breaking down caste taboos. So this kind of move where you are saying exactly what the bench asked. The bench asked that you are asking who's serving you the food. Next, what will you ask? Who's the person who grew the food? Am I going to ask that did the Muslim farmer grow the aubergine that you are eating? Where does this nonsense end? So that's one. And the second thing that we ordered was that, names like identity, that when you're saying this, give your name. You're saying, oh, it's nothing. I'm asking you to give your name. This is a proxy for your identity. We are living in a country where the last 3 years, we have seen riots where they have taken voters lists and used the Muslim names to mark out who the victims were. So in that case, your name is your identity. It's a proxy for your identity. And that is the dangerous thing about displaying your name.
So Abhishek Singhvi, who argued on your behalf, he made this point about exclusion based on identity.
Yep.
The counter argument that the UP government has given is that this is to manage hygiene, it's to avoid confusion. The Kavariyas have some religious sentiments during this period, and those should be honored.
So,
what would you say to that?
Number one, there's only an intellectual pygmy of very limited intelligence could even put forward an argument where you say that the name of the person who works in the shop has anything to do with hygiene. Right? If you want to crack down on hygiene, please set standards on how food is to be, how kitchens are to be kept, how kitchens are to be cleaned, how many times bathrooms and eating establishments are to be cleaned, what kind of disinfectants have to be used, all of that. Those are standards which come within hygiene, which are health and safety standards, which are perfectly within the purview. Knowing if my name is Mahua Moitra or Mahira Rahman has nothing to do with whether the plate has been washed or the plate has not been washed. So that is complete garbage. That's complete garbage, number one. The second thing he talks about Kavariyas' beliefs. The Kavariyas are no different from any religious followers of anything. So what do the Kavariyas want? They are vegetarian during a certain time and they will eat vegetarian food. There are people who are vegetarian 365 days of the year, for example. Do those people not go to a restaurant? The question here is, we were not even talking about restaurants. There is a difference between cooked food and uncooked food. So this
the mango
blanket,
seller,
this was such an absurd blanket order where if you were selling Bisleri water or Coca-Cola or Pepsi and you had a store selling bottled stuff, even then you would have to display your name. You had nothing to do. There was no safety. There was no hygiene. There was nothing. What good would that serve? How does uncooked fruits or vegetables or stationery or anything, it applied to all vendors, have to do with the religion? So it was only to say that for some reason, anyone who is non-majority, they cannot be growers, they cannot be givers, they cannot be servers, they cannot be cooks. So this is the very basis of untouchability. This is the basis of religious discrimination. It is against Article 15, 17, 19, 21. It's as simple as that.
The judge, one of the two judges, in fact, in open court shares a story about how there were two vegetarian restaurants that he liked, one run by a Hindu, one run by a Muslim, and he found that in that particular case, the one run by the Muslim had better hygiene. But the court did seem all right with a flagging of vegetarian vis-a-vis non-vegetarian.
Of course, that's
that
important.
kind of labeling.
But of course, but that's even today. If you go if you go to any restaurant today and there's a menu, it says veg and then it says non-veg. Yeah. It doesn't have a full menu. It segregates them. That's the way it is everywhere. Where you have culturally, we are vegetarians and non-vegetarians. Even when you go abroad, when you see, you have it divided into fish, and you have fish, then you have meat and poultry, and then you have salads. So all of that's a menu. It's a presentation item. It tells you what the menu is, and that is a natural course of events, that's a national standard which is in practice right now. So they haven't interfered with that. That's a standard based on common sense.
Notices have been issued to Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Madhya Pradesh. Right. What is intriguing is that there was no response in court from these governments.
Possibly because there's a turf war going on between the centre and the UP government is what I'm told. Otherwise, I'm sure the Honourable Solicitor General Tushar Mehta would have been on his legs shouting and screaming and trying to shout us all down. So I'm sure we'll have a bit of that on Friday.
So you think Yogi Adityanath's been left out to dry by the centre?
Possibly, could be, possibly from what's going on. But otherwise, I think, let's wait for Friday's fun and games. But this was very important interim order. Also very important, Barkha. I'm very glad that we got this today because today was the start of the Yatra.
Yeah.
Very often these things drag out. We approach the Supreme Court, it drags out and it becomes infectious. So in this case, it is very important that before the start of the Yatra that we actually got the order.
What makes somebody like you go to court? The one other time that was a very emotional moment for everybody was the Bilkis Bano case, and you went to court. This time you went to court. What makes you go to court? You could have got up in Parliament and said, "Ye kyun hua?" You went to court.
We have to stop it because if we lose faith in the courts, I know people tell me the court's not going to do anything. Last night somebody told me, I was at a dinner, they said, "Why are you wasting your time? Do you think the court will do anything?" And there are two very important things we need to remember. And when you make your reels after the interview, make sure you do a reel of this part.
Okay.
Barkha. They're two separate parts and I'm going to say them separately. Number one, if we lose faith in the courts, they can rule for us, against us. But if we fundamentally lose hope in the courts as the provider of justice as the last resort, then we have lost faith in the Constitution, in the country. We may as well just pack up and go home. Yeah. So that hope we have to keep alive. The second thing, what is more important, is that this is a time in history, in the history of India, where every single one of us has to put their hand up and display which side of the Rubicon we are on. So in something like this, if we are silent, then you're a participant. There is nothing known as a silent audience. If you are silent while something like this happens, I believe in Nazi, what did the Nuremberg trial say? That people who were silent, people who didn't say anything were equally guilty. So you have error of omission or of commission. So similarly here, to be silent is to be a willing participant. And I did not want this on my conscience. And for every judge that will rule against, that judge will go down in history, but history will judge us. I was reading this poem this other day which said that sab yaad rakha jayega. And yes, sab yaad rakha jayega. So we need to go to the court. If the court rules against us and says no and gives their reasoning, then that particular bench, that particular judge will go down in history and will be judged in history as having acquiesced to this kind of nonsense. So that is also important to do. We are all on test here.
So you think the judges will be held to account by history, if not by the present?
Of course. Do we not remember ADM Jabalpur? Do we not remember all the cases? Do we not remember Vineet Narayan? Do we not remember Eshavananda Bharati? Do we not remember Puttaswamy? Yeah. Do we not remember every single case which stood up for the Constitution and helped us reclaim it?
Yeah.
Right. So this is important. We have to give the Supreme Court a chance to at least come out. If we don't approach the court, it's not possible for them to take so much cognizance all the time.
How do you feel today that the court has, without any delay, it's an interim order, yes, but it's an immediate halt?
That's because the court has understood that it is starting today. And this kind of dangerous nonsense, if I may say, if it is allowed for even one day and the yatra starts, then it's a fait accompli.
The court made particular note about a couple of things. One, that you could have a food establishment, a dhaba, owned by a Hindu but with Muslim employees. And our own ground reports have shown that fear of police, fear of administration is making them say to their Muslim employees, just don't come to work for a few days.
Or change their names. You'll see this in rural areas, that you will have a Muslim with a, using a Hindu name. Why? Why would anyone do that? Because it's the fear of violence, the fear of discrimination.
Yeah. And there was a comment on the fact that there's penalty attached, there's punitive action attached.
Absolutely.
That this is not just a suggestion or a voluntary
advisory.
It's not an advisory.
Piece of helpful advice. Yes. Yeah.
Although that is how the police initially presented it. That this is to avoid confusion.
This is the UP police. They're running the biggest Gunda Raj on the face of this planet.
That's a big statement.
This is the
They will say that the same about West Bengal
that's
police.
That's fine. Catch us putting out directives like this. When is the last time West Bengal police put out a directive like this? Please tell us. Please tell us, ever since that the Mamata Banerjee government has come to power, or even the left before that, for all their
there have been altercations with ED officials,
there might have been altercations with ED officials. We're talking about constitutional rights and liberties, Barkha. We're not talking about law and order and police.
No, this comment is just for the UP police, not about the Kanwar Yatra.
So obviously the UP police are hand in glove with a bigoted majoritarian government. But it's not the police's fault also, because that's, it's very difficult to go against the state's chief minister, who's also the home minister. But the fact that the police are coming out, the UP police aren't exactly known as a neighboring friendly Mr. Plot, the policeman. So if
I haven't heard of Mr. Plot since my Edith Blyton years.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, so it wasn't exactly Plot the policeman telling you. There is an air of menace attached to this, and the poor and the impoverished and daily wage earners who are working in these establishments. I mean, what do you think?
So, I don't know how many people know that the Amarnath Yatra, for example, a Hindu pilgrimage, is only Muslims prepare all the food. Muslims are the poniwalas, yes. Those who carry pilgrims up in the palkis when they're too tired to walk. Ganesh Chaturthi, many of the murtis are made by Muslims. Outside temples, you'll have Muslims as flower sellers. This is the India we have known and loved. This is the India we know and love. Why did this particular order say to you, even though it didn't use the word Muslims, that this was tagging an effective economic boycott, perhaps a move towards making, as you said, Dalits pariah? What was it in the order that left out?
Because it left out because what it meant was, see, food is the very basis of caste, of religion. All of this are usually food habits, cultural and food habits. So food is the very essence of what defines most religious beliefs or cultural beliefs. So food is a very big line of discrimination as well, because what you eat is who you are, is how you cut it, or, things like that. So when this came out and said, what immediately you saw on the ground is that the reaction on the ground was immediate. It's like all establishment owners were in a state of panic. All people who worked in these eateries were in a state of panic. If it was not based on discrimination, nobody would care. If the UP police and everybody else was ambivalent towards whether your name was Ram or Rahim, nobody would care. But unfortunately, 10 years of BJP government in this country have got us to a point where 250 million Muslims are living under the shadow of fear, where 20 million Christians are living under the shadow of fear, where 23 million Sikhs are, their farmers are treated the way they are. So all religions are not the same in India because they are running a majoritarian Raj. So when you have an explicit order telling people that you are going to be discriminated against, that's a red flag right there.
The political right-wing supporters of the BJP, not everybody has supported this order, but those who have, they will argue that people like yourself, people like me, we don't speak up when there is exclusionary social practices in minority religions.
Like
do you
what?
think, I don't know, the idea of a kafir, for example, right?
In Hinduism, we have the idea of a mleccha. Mahasi Rabindranath Tagore, for example, you had many Brahmins in Bengal who crossed the oceans, and when they came back, they were not considered as Brahmins anymore. You have this in every religion, where you have the concept of a non-believer.
Yeah.
You have the concept of non-believer in Christianity, you have the concept of a non-believer in Judaism, you have the concept of a non-believer everywhere. That's not the same thing as in 21st century India telling someone that I will not eat food, that you are legally allowing somebody to enforce their own bigoted beliefs outside of their home in a way as to do a larger economic boycott against a community.
I agree with you, but they quote from some old establishment, ownership act, whatever, that requires me to say, ye meri dukaan hai, mera number.
I'm sure all registration of all shops all across India require that. So why did we not have a pan-India thing saying every shop owner, where does it require to tell you the name of your staff? Where? And why only during the 240-kilometer route of the Kanwar Yatra are only people required to say the name of that? I mean, there are sure registration documents, frankly, in India. This is a country where I see people driving without license plates sometimes and there's no enforcement by police.
Yeah.
I've seen kids running around doing stunts in fancy cars without the number plate has not come.
And we've seen
applied for.
And we've seen people die from that.
Yeah, we've died from that. This is a country where, where most places there is no enforcement of it. So if there is a blanket law, and that law exists for your registration, but that doesn't apply to a fruit seller.
How do you understand this politically? Given that Hindutva, in its sort of coarsest form, did not work for the BJP in Uttar Pradesh, it's odd that Yogi Adityanath, at a time when there is turbulence within the UP BJP, has chosen to double down on it. Like, how do you read it politically?
It's the only thing they know. It's the only thing they know.
It's also a day when the opposition has alleged that an old order on the RSS has been reversed, which said that government staff can now be associated with the RSS. I don't know if you've seen that, and that's also become.
Well, you had a judge in Madhya Pradesh who come out and said quite openly that I would like to be a part of the RSS. So I think, this is something that we know they've taken over the establishment. So, but I think it's the only thing they know how to do.
Finally, what do you expect or hope for from the court on Friday? We have a 5-day period in which there is a reprieve. The court has let it be known through observations, but the court also said to Abhishek Singhvi, look, let's not exaggerate. We can address the concerns of hygiene. We can address the concerns of vegetarianism.
Absolutely. And you don't need to know the name of the person who's serving you to address either the concern of vegetarianism or of hygiene. You want to address the concern of hygiene. I personally for a person, I'm always eating street food.
Yeah. And
I would personally have a problem with standards of hygiene. Whenever I'm eating street food, my mother's always like, you're going to get sick, and I eat it anyway.
Yeah.
But, we're all street food eaters and we've all lived with this issue of hygiene all our lives. Correct. I mean, you go to Thailand or you go anywhere else and you don't really get sick, and especially during the monsoons and things like that. That has nothing to do with, I go to eat a puchka. The problem is, do I eat a puchka on the street or do I not eat a puchka on the street?
It's not
I don't ask whether it's arif or ame. That's not the point. Nothing to do with it. Second is vegetarianism. You want to eat cooked vegetarian food? Choose off the vegetarian section of the menu. If you want, there are also restaurants, for example, in Tamil Nadu, which serve pure vegetarian restaurants. Please go to a pure vegetarian restaurant. Enough of them exist.
Yeah. One of the things you'd said, my final question, after the verdict, when I remember doing an interview with you, and you said, look, things aren't going to be the way they were, and the BJP has to understand that. Do you find that space for change, as you would prefer it, has opened up?
It's early days yet, yes, but yes. In fact, even during this yatra, for example, the fact that there was such a clamor about it, and the fact that almost everybody stood up and said, what rubbish is this? And we need
by the way, including many of the Kavadiyas themselves, who said it makes no difference to us, what the name of the shop is.
We've always said this, that if you are a pure Hindu, I'm an Hindu, I've never thought like that. So there's not a question of there are certain type of Hindus who believe this and those who don't. That religion in its true form doesn't preach this. Yeah. And we shouldn't practice it that way. This is only some perverse twist put to it by the BJP.
To those who say, where do you get the energy to fight? Because every day is a fight. Some days it's a political fight, some days it's an emotional fight, some days it's a legal fight. A lot of people would say, like the person you met at dinner, leave it, Mahua. Pick your battles. You would say what?
This is it. I'm sorry. This is the war. This is the war. It is an extended war in which there are lots of battles. And you can't shy away from these battles, because if you shy away from them, you just end up losing the big war.
Well, it's been a big victory for you.
Yes, thank you. And more important than Barkha, I want to say that to all the people out there, just don't sit there. This could be me. I filed it. Anybody could file it. Yeah. So next time to do something like this, we just have to go slam, bang, the minute it comes up. This BJP survives on the fact that either we are too scared or we are too lazy or we are just going to let it pass for all of this garbage to go on and for them to turn this country into what it's not, what it was never meant to be. So it's high time. The electorate has shown courage and with the results that we've got. And now it's time for us to start changing the sort of parameters. And we should do that.
Thank you, Mahua.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.